give us a sound test for a moment.
So,
Okay, there we go. Hello everyone, welcome to another stream. I'm Moody, I'm here with Ultris. We're just on chat talking about Season 1 of Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise, how good it was, how bad it was, any speculation, anything. So we're going to be covering quite a bit, I imagine. Anyway, Ultris, I'll let you take it away from here for the moment.
not much to say here. I'm the guy who dragged Moody into a discussion-style podcast-ish video where we're going to be going over Build Divers Re-Rise, what we liked about it, what could be done better, and speculating on Season 2.
Right. So, where do you want to start? Episode 1 for obvious sort of way of going about it, or do you want to just go over a general chatter?
Well, I kind of feel like breaking down each episode a bit
Okay.
and then trying to collaborate thoughts here.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine if you want to do it that way, structure it that way. So, episode 1, I'll start with the bits because I've speed watched all of it again, like twice I think it was to get a little bit more of a grasp on it, because when I initially watched it I was like, oh, this is brilliant. I still think it's good. But it's one of those things where, for some strange reason, I've just not been back to it since, even though I keep claiming it's fantastic. I like
I completely agree.
I like the way that when we start out in the very beginning with Hiroto and the main fight sequence, it sets up the tone not only of like the rest of the show, but it gives you a very good idea of what you're in for in terms of comparing it to the previous series where it was just build divers. Mainly because a lot of us have complained previously that Build Divers itself was pretty bland. It fell flat, and it felt like, again, I'm going to mention this over and over and over in different streams, but it felt like there was no weight or sort of urgency to anything. There was no sort of struggle, and it felt like the characters were more or less traveling from A to B without any sort of roadblocks or bumps, apart from episode 13, which was the fight with the Astray No Name. Whereas
It's so good.
it is a really good episode, that. But with Re-Rise, it sets it up because immediately you're introduced to Hiroto's combat style, which is very, very skilled compared to the previous pilots that we've had, or previous builders that have come in and sort of had to learn everything and slowly built up the skills over time. Hiroto's come in at a very high skill level in terms of his piloting and his building, from what it seems. And the opening fight with the Akatsuki, I think it is, that it shows you not only the skill but the sort of cunning and thought process behind his fights, where he's like, okay, I'll utilize whatever I've got in in my hand or to my advantage, and even if it means sacrificing teammates, I don't really care as long as the objective's done. So it kind of gives you this idea of a cold, sort of stoic protagonist that really doesn't give a damn about anybody else.
That's one of the points that I picked up on was he's very calculating and very standoffish. He knows his way around the battlefield, but prefers to not work with people. And if he does, he knows he can use them as decoys to get the mission done at the end of the day. um, for me, I liked episode 1 because, as you said, it sets up the tone for the show and what we are to expect later on down the line, but also because I feel like it does a very good job compared to Divers. of introducing us to the main cast. Uh, we get to see Harato, his play style, and, how he generally acts towards or with other people. Then we're shown, like, Kazumi. He's a very boisterous person. He's very, out there. He wants to be recognized. We're shown Parviz, who admittedly at the beginning of the show is shown to be very timid and shy, and even when he goes up to Kazumi later, he sort of just backs away because he's too embarrassed or shy to ask to be somebody's friend. And then we get May, who's just super mysterious. I mean, she's shown literally on top of a building looking out into the horizon. That's all we get of her. I mean, that alone, better character introductions right there.
I'm inclined to actually agree with that because with Kazami will change over time when we talk about him throughout the episodes, but I like the way they introduce each character as a completely different one where you actually get to pick up on the types of character that they are immediately. Divers kind of just threw everybody in and just went, here, have fun, from what I remember anyway. I don't go back and watch Divers apart from episode 13. But the characterization for each one of them makes it so it's easy to pick out certain like traits with the characters. Like, for instance, like you said about Parr. Parr comes across as the new player that doesn't know anything about GBN, that likes to build stuff but is generally just completely lost. And then when he's presented with somebody else like Kazami that he can look up to from his point of view and be like, oh, this guy seems really cool, seems like he can handle himself, he talks the talk. Kazami comes across as one of those guys that's outwardly confident at the beginning, kind of, to us at least, slapstick humor from how he's treated throughout the series. But at the beginning, to all the characters, he either comes across, like to Hiroto and Mei, he comes across as annoying because of how he acts, but to Parr, he's this sort of beacon of, okay, this is who I should be looking to for advice or for some sort of strategy or help, because everybody else is kind of either acting mysterious or just doesn't want to know me. Because Mei and Hiroto don't really interact with Parr too much at the beginning. Like we've said, Mei obviously, later on we find out that she's there doing her own mission, but she's incredibly mysterious. We don't really know too much about her. Her secrets get revealed later on, but she's about the only one that I can say wasn't really built up properly as a character at the beginning, because they wanted to introduce that in the storyline later on as something that we would find out gradually.
Yeah, and I think another thing that episode 1 does better, more towards the second half / end of the episode, is how it builds up, because through at the beginning of the show, after the intro rolls and the intro ends, there's an announcement by some PR guy about the up-and-coming update to GBN, which is going to add story missions and other dynamic features. And Kazumi, I guess he's got some sort of information network, or he just ran into somebody who gave him false information, because let's be real, it's the internet here. He gets this information about a secret mission. Okay, so the secret mission is actually a long story that the entire show takes place over, but the characters don't know this. Kazumi just wants the rewards, and he, after Harato logs in, Kazumi just kind of goes up to him and is like, hey, partner, let's go find this secret mission I heard about. And it's just like, what? and then we get a shot where Parr is walking down the street because he tried asking Kazumi to be his friend but was too embarrassed, and he notices Kazumi and dragging Hirato into an alleyway. And the best part about this is how it sets up this whole story that the show takes place is that Parr, following Hirato and Kazumi, hears a voice from down another alleyway and goes to check it out. Now he gets scared, and Kazumi and Hirato go running over to check what that noise was. And May flies down from on top of the buildings, all mysterious, like, just coming out of nowhere. And there's a hollow image. Oops, sorry, I bopped my mic there. with who we'll later know as Freddy, and he's pleading for help. And I guess he can either see, or it's just that he can hear the main cast talking to him. And when it happens and they're all teleported to this strange world, this strange place, it's almost bright and cheery, and it gets dark later on, but it's presented as this sort of, this is a secret mission type thing, because that's what we're led to believe by Kazumi. And pretty much that's roughly the end of the first episode. They just get teleported to this village. They defend it from some enemies, and they get the name awarded, the title, I should say, Build Divers. And I don't know if that was just like a clever reference, or if like they were there at some point, which I doubt, but
the way that I see it is it's almost as if they wanted to obviously give it a little nod to the series that came before it. So instead of changing the name, which is obviously placeholder, they just turn around and just change the I just for the sake of it.
Yeah, they just like change the I, and she's like, "This will do, right? It's a different name." And I'm just thinking to myself, all you did was change one letter. The fuck?
The thing that I like about all of episode 1 is that technically, when you think about it, Kazumi is the instigator for all of this. No matter where he got the information from, it's him being slightly calculating in his own way and being like, you know what, I'm probably going to stand more of a chance if I grab Hirato and take him with me, because if I find any strong enemies there, I can just always wing it with him and he'll probably have my back, and that kind of shows what kind of a person Kazumi is. It's like, he's already planning that, yeah, sure, he's probably going to get overwhelmed by something, so he's got to have somebody there to back him up as the guy to go to, and then he can take the glory and the rewards and the titles that he's after. So he comes across as one of those leech characters that you see in MMORPGs, where you'll have a person that's like, I want to level up real fast, and somebody will be like, oh, okay, if you want to come with me and at least hit, say, this enemy once, you can get the experience from it and you'll level up that way. He's that kind of guy where he's using whatever he can to his advantage, as well as Hirato using everybody else. So it's a neat thing that we get to see from Kazumi. But Parr gets roped into it because he just wants to be friends with everybody, and because Kazumi turns him down, he just happens to stumble upon them as they're going into the alleyway. And sure enough, curiosity just gets to him. Like I said before, he's a new player. He doesn't know what's going on. He's just seen Hirato coming out of a really, really intense battle, so he's still kind of enamored by his skills. And then he's seen Kazumi, who he's tried to befriend anyway, walking and talking and thinking, wait a minute, where are these two going? This is weird. he goes to follow them, and of course, then that's how he gets roped in, and May just happens to be there, almost like Batman. But the way that episode 1 is done, it's pretty neat as a package. It wraps everything up in itself in terms of how it introduces everything really nicely. There's nothing really sort of left out that I think I would like them to include, because as we've said with like the part where it goes over the update to GBN, I think Build Divers itself suffered a little bit from having to explain everything in GBN every so often, and kind of reminds me of when you play a game in a series, say like for instance Final Fantasy 13 specifically. Final Fantasy 13 sets up a lot of its story narrative by telling you all this complicated stuff at the very beginning of the first game, and you kind of are left trying to process it throughout the entire thing. By the time you get to the third game in the series, you understand the narrative, you understand what's going on and how everything is structured and works, but to get to that point, it's very boring and it feels terrible. You know, it's like, it slows the pacing having to explain everything. Whereas now we're in Re-Rise and GBN has been explained. They get to give you these really fun sequences where they show off the different events, where you can kind of turn around and go, okay, I kind of recognize what they're doing here. This is kind of like a familiar MMO that I've played, or this is like a game that I've seen. Specifically, some of the events that they have are really neat, that I actually wish they'd do something like this with a proper game, where they introduce stuff like a Pixie versus 1,000 Zaku's, or they have underwater battles, like underwater 1v1 I think it was, or go to the ELS homeworld from Gundam 00. I think it is. Those are just examples of some of the events that they had on show when they introduced GBN's new patch, just to give you an idea of, yeah, welcome back. It's another extension of this series that we already did, but we kind of made a few changes, and we've tried to make it a little bit more exciting for you and a little bit more familiar. And I like the way they do that. I really do, because it really adds to it to make it feel more like a game rather than your sort of generic isekai kind of thing.
I do want to add, just for like clarity's sake, I hate the fact that we had to go through divers to get here.
I know, right? That's like what everybody says, like we're saying about my analogy with Final Fantasy 13. It's like, I heard a load of people when FF13-3 came out saying, oh god, I hate the other two games because they're like giant hallways, but 13-3 is kind of okay. I'm like, yeah. So I can see where you're going with that. It is annoying that we had to suffer one really dull show with maybe like one or two good fight sequences just to get to a good show with a good narrative, you know.
Well, I guess it comes here now. We move on to episode 2.
Yep.
With a sort of interesting opening. Towards the, I think it was the end of episode 1, Harato gets asked by the manager of Gundam Base, which also doubles as like a cafe restaurant, if he knows any cute girls who would work there. That's just funny. That, like, I think that was a well-placed comedy, but I feel like it works well because it sets up Hinata, who is going to be a recurring character in the show, as a key figure in Hirato's real-life setting. And we open with her serving customers in this restaurant/cafe, and Hirato and the manager are sharing a table talking about, oh, you told me you didn't know any cute women, and Hirato's just like, huh? I mean, I get it. They're more like brother and sister, but the way they interact feels a little off, if you ask me. And the manager, I guess, sort of portrays the the person watching these two interact, as they feel close, but not like brother and sister-ish, sort of.
See, with that kind of thing that they've got going on with Hiroto and Hinata, I feel like the way that they joke about that is almost like your standard show where you have a male and female cast member and they're sort of acting dumb to each other's feelings. That's the kind of vibe I get throughout the entire thing, because throughout later episodes, Hinata's constantly there to kind of either help Hiroto around his house or to kind of bring him back down to earth a little bit when he's zoning out a little bit, or when he's drifting off in thought, or just to kind of
Such a nice family friend.
be there for him as a friend, yeah. But I feel like she does play that kind of role that the show's given her of, you're going to be a kind of love interest, not properly, but we're going to hint at it just so that everybody else kind of gets the idea, and then we're going to play it off as a joke. It's not a bad thing, seen it done in plenty of other shows. It's just something that I think can easily be picked up on like that, the way that the manager plays it off, at least.
Right. The next point I have is Maggie gets reintroduced, which is nice. I definitely like to always see previous cast appear in a sequel if possible, like if the setting allows for it. And it's sort of suspicious because May is there and she's having this weird conversation that almost sounds like she's spying on the party with him. And it's like, is May gonna be a bad guy, or what's going on here? And then it's time for her to meet with the rest of the cast so that they can go back to the village that they had saved in the previous episode. So it sets her up as being an even more mysterious character here. After that, I love how it goes into Kazumi freaking out that he didn't get a title reward. I knew this guy wanted that title reward hardcore, but I didn't think it was like that bad. Like messaging the administration that he didn't get one, that's pretty bad. And then we see Parvis reviewing the mission in awe of everyone's skills, which, I mean, it was, I think in this episode explains that it was his first battle.
Mm.
And who can't help but be in awe of people who are better than you, when you're a new player.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure everyone can get behind that sentiment. Anything you want to add, Moody?
Well, the bit with Kazumi, it kind of reminds me a little bit of going back again to sort of familiar things. From like when we had the whole thing with Bungie giving out recon armor for Halo at a point in time. If anybody was round during that when they were giving it out, basically it was this whole sort of reward that you could get on rare occasion if you did something amazing in Halo 3, I think it was. But apart from when they actually included it properly as like Vidmaster challenges, it was super rare. So to see somebody with this, it was like the coolest thing ever, because you could never get it. And I feel like Kazumi comes across as one of those guys where you tell him there's a way of getting something, he goes out of his way to get it like crazy. And when he doesn't get it, he's like those people, he freaks out. He's just like, why didn't I get this? I was promised this. So, of course, then he starts emailing the company, starts saying, wait a minute, I've done everything you said. And they're just like, dude, what are you on? So it definitely brings that kind of familiar sort of feel to the character where he definitely wants everything that he can get. He wants everything that's unique. He wants all these title things really badly just because he likes bragging. Part of his character is showing off. So like when he's promised something that he can use to show off and he doesn't get it, then that shows that side of him where he's like, I wanted this, I was promised it, where is it? I'll start writing as many emails as I have to get this thing, you know. It's just funny. It brings another comedic element to him because he comes across as so ridiculous when it comes to his passion for this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it gets even better when they get to the village, because then he's like not only complaining about not getting it, he's also like complaining to the inhabitants of this place and his party at the same time. And it's just like, would you calm down and think about this? And then I believe it's Harato says that it's possible it could be like a chain mission. So there's, a certain number of missions that you have to complete before getting the reward. And then Cosme's like, could it be an advanced release of the story missions? Huh. Which, admittedly, the whole thing seems a little suspicious at that point, because it's like, usually most of the missions are just one thing. You go, you do it, you get the reward. And for this to be happening to a new cast that we're introduced to right off the bat seems a little suspicious, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those scenarios as well where they don't really think too much about it themselves as protagonists. But from the audience standpoint, obviously we know something's a little bit fishy, primarily because it's a totally different setting to what we're used to. And there's absolutely nothing apart from, I think, Death Army grunts that are the main antagonists for most of it. So what we end up seeing is a land that's populated by furry characters, which we've only really seen a couple of in Build Divers, the series, if I remember rightly. There was a couple of them that were introduced in Build Divers just for the sake of making it different and kind of establishing that, yeah, it's a video game, so you can have everything as your avatar. But at the same time, when
Before we continue...
Oh, go on.
Yeah, before we continue, I just want to point out, furry warning. They're everywhere.
So yeah, when we get greeted in this season or this part of the series by an entire land that's full of furry inhabitants, that I've noticed, not so much to me in particular. I wasn't really sort of against or for it. I was just like, oh, okay, this is a new setting, I don't mind. But with the way everybody else has kind of taken it, it seems like it's a very divisive choice where it's either you like it because it's a different direction and you don't really mind it that much, as long as, like with me, you get some decent action and decent story, or you absolutely hate it because you hate the idea of furry characters in Gundam, and immediately it's like, get the flamethrowers. I've noticed there's no in between.
Get the Kamenwaffes. Personally, for me, I don't mind it. We're also, not only is it a video game, I guess, like, the people who made GBN have designed dimensions, which, Jesus Christ, that's got to take a lot of computing power. And each dimension is sort of different. And if we think about it, realistically, we in the real world, like the actual real world, haven't, explored every planet because we're not able to. So it's entirely possible that a group, a entire race or civilization of fur-covered people exists that aren't people with genetic problems. But, yeah, it wasn't a problem for me. I enjoyed this episode because it gives us a look into the people who inhabit this planet, what their life is like. And when they get there, not everyone is so accepting of the group, especially because of the way Kazumi acts. If there was never a dumber character, I don't know what I could do without this show. Like, I mean, Kazumi he's that brash idiot who doesn't read in between the lines if it would save his life. Like, ever.
See, out of all of this that we're going to be talking about, we'll get round to it later, but I actually like Kazumi's arc at the moment because everybody had the same reaction. He's just a complete idiot. He's just there for comedic humor, you know. He's just there to be the guy that gets beaten up every single time, and you watch him sort of going around and completely bumbling things up, a little bit like Team Rocket in Pokemon. But I actually do, like later on we'll probably talk about it, I like how his arc progresses because it goes from that kind of whole thing of, oh god, this guy's a moron, to, oh, okay, this was unexpected, and oh no, now he's suffering. You know? But yeah, episode 2 is nice in the fact that it builds up the world really fast. It establishes characters that you can start to pick out in terms of not so much the names, but how they act to everybody, how they fit into the social group that they have in the village. And it's pretty neat, again, like you said, to see that not all the characters are so trusting because of the way that everything has been happening or taking place before the Build Divers end up in this other world. It's one of those where everybody else isn't too sure about them because of the fact of they're using mobile suits, and the things that are attacking them are mobile suits, but very similar to the original Gundam, where you have the Gundam versus Zaku's, and the first thing you notice is that Zaku's have the mono eye and the Gundam has two eyes. It's the same thing where most of the mobile suits, the hero suits, even if they're not, as Kazami says, traditional suits, with his Justice Knight being the only normal one, really, because of the core Gundam being made up of a modular system. Parr's suit being a transforming SD, and May's being a complete mystery that we'll talk about later on when we get to that. Apart from that, they're kind of in that same sort of mind of, well, it's got two eyes instead of one eye, so should we trust it? Because they've always done this whole thing with Gundam of everything that has a mono eye basically is portrayed as evil. But I like the way they set everything up. It's nice, it's neat. Again, I didn't think there was anything that needed to be added to it. It was, again, another solid episode that, after following on from the previous episode, was really nice and set everything on course in terms of the story, introducing new characters, and where you think it's going to go with having to help the people of the land or the village combat this threat that they've got on the doorstep. And something that I didn't think I added on the end of episode 1 was, and I'm going to mention this a couple of times probably because I do that with stuff that I'm really passionate about, but the last fight sequence that leads into this episode 2, I really enjoyed the music that goes along with it, because like with Build Divers, you have a couple of tracks that stand out. Specifically, like in Build Divers, it's the battle track, the one track that you hear a couple of times, and then it gets used through the rest of the series on really, really desperate sort of moments. You hear it when they're doing the event where they have to beat the modified Lavien Rose, I think it is, the challenge in Build Divers, where the Double O Sky gets its wings of light, like its Trans Am mode. You hear it there, that kicks in, and it has a couple of tracks in Re-Rise that are very similar. That you kind of think, well, this sets the tone a lot more. It gets your blood pumping, it gets you hyped, and I really like those tracks because they really really help with the action scenes. But I can't help but feel like, especially with the intro for the first season of Re-Rise, a little bit like the first season of just standard Build Divers, that it almost feels like they didn't use the right track to give the same excitement to the opening, because as we saw with Build Divers, the normal one, and the second season, where they have a much more upbeat kind of rock style intro for the second half, I remember describing it as it almost feels like the show has finally kind of awoken to what its tone should be, and it's kind of made it a little bit more refreshing and rejuvenated. I really, really enjoyed that moment where it kind of thought about what it was doing with the opening and decided, you know what, we'll take it in a different direction instead of using. It was a really weird one. It's almost like jazz, isn't it? For the it's hard to describe the Build Divers season one's intro for the first half of it. It's a really weird. It's an upbeat track, but it's not sort of what you would expect, I suppose, for something that's basically gonna be a battle anime. It's really weird.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't gone back to Divers really. Probably should go back just for the music, because it was probably the only good thing about it, except for episode 13. Facts are facts. I don't know. I like episode 2, but I feel like it could have been a bit better. Um, I didn't mind like the whole intro part with like Maggie and May being all mysterious, but I feel like because of the way Kazumi is, they tried to make the episode centered around that. It just felt a little rushed. Wasn't a bad episode, but could have been a bit better. Another reoccurring problem I have with the show, and it starts mostly in episode 2, you're going to get a lot of flashbacks to Hirato's past.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a bad thing to have flashbacks, but it's like every episode to every other episode, you get a handful of flashbacks that always go back to Hirato and some girl who we don't know yet what her name is, who she is. She's apparently important to Hirato, but that's about all we know. Like, it pops up constantly, and I'm just like, we get to know her name. I'd say about, I think it's halfway through the first season. But it's like, to get there, we had to go through a bunch of flashbacks, and that was the most annoying thing. But yeah, it starts mostly in episode 2, where what you call it, they're figuring out how to protect the village from roughly 20 of these modified Death Army units, and they come up with the idea of a created mission. And the difference here is that they can't give, like, when you do a created mission, you can't give the AI unique AI, so to speak. and that's something that's brought up later, but they basically just do a created mission with somehow, I don't know how Harato saw the entire village. He created a caldera that looked very similar and used a base as the village default. And like my only question is for this whole thing is where did Harato get the time to scope out the entire surrounding of the village?
Well,
Just where?
I mean, when we see other episodes in future, we see Hirato using different versions of his armor as kind of like either remote drones or being able to. I think it's when they have a training fight versus Kazumi's old Group 3 ram with ages ago. We get to see, I think it's either the Earth armor used as kind of like a remote camera. I kind of figured that it would be something very similar where he uses the Earth armor as like a surveillance style unit to be able to scan the area really fast and get that data back to him. That's how I always went off that anyway.
Huh. But yeah, after they get the created mission done and they quote unquote successfully defend the base, which is bouncing between 2% and 1% life, hilarious. And Harato just seems kind of down, and Hinata is just always there to give him like some words of encouragement, whether direct or indirect. And we just before the credits roll, we see Harato at his house thinking about how he's going to do the mission, and then Hinata comes up and is like, I know you'll get through it because that's who you are, type of thing. And then he walks over to this cabinet which has like 20 boxes of presumably alternate armor for the core Gundam. And he pulls out a box labeled Mars. And then that's where we get the credits. And in this sense, it sort of sets Harato up to be this person who has all the strategy. You know, just like he's the one who comes up with everything. We'll get into why this is a problem later on, but I think it's kind of funny that he has all this armor already made up and just like ready to go. And throughout his flashbacks, we never see any of this armor.
See, from my understanding with that scene, I kind of understood it as with Hinata telling him like he's the guy that will always find some way to make stuff go the way he wants, or he'll always have some sort of answer to any problem that he might encounter. The way I understood it from that was not that all of the armors are already pre-built, the kind of Tony Stark style, as Corsair said in chat, where he can just immediately call upon them whenever we want, because otherwise, like you've said, it would make no sense with the previous bits of the story or his flashbacks where he doesn't have them or doesn't use them. I get the feeling that he might have either ideas for future stuff that he's not got fully completed yet, or maybe he's got bits and pieces of different kits that he's getting ready to kit bash if he needs something. Like, for instance, we see later on with the Venus, I think it is, the V2 armor, he gets rewarded at a later part a large rapid firing beam cannon, instead of a title. And they say, like, look, we can use this in a battle. Next minute, he has the Venus armor with this cannon. So it makes me think that he might have just a lot of spare parts and that he can easily just kit bash whatever he needs to overnight, similar to build fighters were, say, in Rage. He would stay up all night doing stuff. That's why, you know, he's always got his light on. He's always got his kit making area ready, you know, for whatever he needs, so he can turn around, especially with these practice matches, because we see a lot of it throughout the show where they, unlike with Build Divers where they kind of go into everything almost blind and sort of wing it and still win, with Re-Rise they do a lot of preparation and actually planning, which is really nice to see, because it makes it feel a little bit more grounded and that there's more thought going into things. But with them doing this preparation and practice, it just makes me think that, yeah, he goes home and decides, you know what, we need this solution for this sort of situation, and then that night he stays up and builds the next parts that he needs for that sort of situation. You know.
You want to start on episode 3 since I did too?
Yeah, so from what I remember anyway, episode 3 starts with them leading up to the fight for the town. They've had the practice and they're getting ready, and specifically we have the townsfolk trying to take cover and preparing and sort of questioning whether they're going to succeed, to which Freddy, the recurring animal character, or the furry character that is with the Build Divers on most of their adventures, kind of like the point into the other world, which we come to know as Eldora later on. Freddy is with them, and
Moody, you spoiled it.
it's fine. I'm gonna be going backwards and forwards anyway with story, but yeah, with them all running around and preparing and sort of questioning as to whether the Build Divers will be successful, we sort of get this urgency in the situation where it's like, okay, we've got to be prepared, we've got to get ready to make sure there's a big battle coming, everybody takes place, but there's still other characters that will influence things later on. And sure enough, we get to the point where the battle begins and the Death Army start their attack, very similar to the sort of plan that they had, where they're trying to file the enemies into a single area so that they can deal with them easier, because in the planning stages they found that trying to split the team in half did not work. There would always be someone that would mess it up, whether it be Kazami and his arrogance for trying to take on almost everything to get the glory, or, you know, whether it would be Parr that would panic, you know, because of pressure that he was feeling and end up messing up. So it ended up with them trying to bottleneck the enemy into one area, which is a pretty smart idea. And to do this, they end up planting explosives on one of the entrances to the village and blowing it up, which crushes a couple of the Death Army grunts under it and allows them to funnel the enemy into one point. So again, it shows off the strategy and the thought that goes into everything and shows that the plan has been successful up to this point. Then they start funneling them in, which shows each one of the team taking a different role. Hiroto has the kind of rear guard role of making sure that he's the final point and that nobody gets past him, because otherwise the Death Army will enter the village. You have Kazami taking the point with his Justice Knight, making sure he's the tank. He's the one that sort of stops all of the units from coming all at once. And you have Parr and May playing the support roles, being able to rain down fire on the battlefield. So everybody has designated roles that they can actually perform really well. What I liked about this part of the episode in particular, which stood out for me, was again Kazami. Just because of how funny he is, because he pulls off this whole confident thing of, I'm going to take you all on, and you think, oh no, it's going to go to hell and back. He's being really arrogant. And then he shows it's a feint, and Hirato's put a pit in front of him that's covered by a tarpaulin or some sort of hologram kind of thing. And most of the Death Army grunts fall into it, and Kazami shows this kind of smug face of just sort of, yeah, you fell for it, I'm happy now. And that was really funny for me to see, just because of the fact if you thought he was going to mess up again, or at least I did, I was like, oh no, this is going to go terrible. And they managed to turn it around. They have a really, really good battle sequence up until the point where the kids of the village come out to see Parr. They've been sort of enamored by Parr's Valkylander and the fact that it looks like a dragon. They've been on about a winged beast for a couple of episodes now, saying about how it looks amazing. And it's one of those where the kids come up to him mid-battle. They find a way out of the shelter and try and distract him. Well, they don't try and do it deliberately. They're just like, Parr, you're amazing. And Parr, of course, does get distracted. As kids do. And Parr does get distracted. And as a result, it ends up with the plan going a little bit the wrong way. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. Basically, Parr falls down from his support area, leaving him to almost get taken out until Mei and Kazami come to his rescue. Well, by this point, their entire formation has fallen apart. What was that, Ultris?
I said, God damn those young whippersnappers.
So yeah, their entire formation falls apart, leaving Hirato to deal with way more suits than he should do. To his credit, though, he actually does manage to take out 4 suits in once with just the earth armor, which is ridiculous. The first shot nails 2 of them, and then he manages to pull off some really stylish beam saber action on the other 2, which ends up with him throwing a beam saber at the last one, which spins around and hits it in the face. I really love some of the moves like that he pulls off. But yeah, the rest of the grunts start making their way through, and one of them comes up from underneath the rubble that was crushed under before. It's managed to survive and starts attacking the town from behind, or the village. And this is where we get to see a little bit more of the armor system, because throughout this entire episode we've had one of the older characters, Jarek, be a little bit critical of the Build Divers and the motives and how they do things. He's always said, like, he doesn't want help, it's fine, he can do things himself, he's looking after his farm, you know. And he doesn't really believe in them, he doesn't want to believe them, he just wants to do everything on his own. And we get to see Jarek more or less soften up a little bit to them when Hirato decides that no, he's going to save the village and specifically Jarek's farm, not because he wants to prove anything to Jarek, but because he's decided he doesn't want to have the mission be a failure, and he doesn't want everybody to end up dead. So he dons the Mars armor that he had created, which is absolutely amazing as a sequence. And we don't see the Mars armor much in future, but when it's used, you do get some really nice action sequences. The Mars armor is equipped with almost like Wolverine claws of sorts, and a couple of heat swords and heat axes, and it's pretty cool to see it in action, to be honest. I like the way that they introduced each of the armors in this, but the Mars armor in particular made me grin really stupidly, because the fact that you kind of think, oh, it's just another armor, it's just a close range version of the Earth armor. But no, it's the fact that the Mars armor is so stupidly strong, as Kazami says, for close combat, that it grabs one of these Death Army grunts and just throws it across the village with a little bit of a boost into a wall, and then manages to cleave straight through it with one of its heat swords in no time flat. So that was really good for me. I really, really enjoyed that sequence. It was fantastic, and I liked the setup for the entire battle. I liked the way that it went. Apart from the kids distracting Parr, I can understand why they did that, because you can't have the sequence be totally perfect without anything going wrong. There wouldn't be any sort of desperation or sort of struggle there if you just, left it as normal. Or otherwise you'd have to have somebody like Kazami mess up. In this one, though, we also get to see May do cleanup, where she starts doing something which is you'll see her do later on in other episodes, where when things are going really bad, she'll use her Wodom pod in melee combat, and it gets shown off a couple of times that the Wodom pod's melee capability is really strong as well, because she can just crush enemy units underneath her heels. Which I wasn't expecting. I didn't know what to expect, like a lot of people out of the Wodom pod, seeing it in the lineup of suits, because it seems like the odd one out, but that'll get revealed later on as well. But yeah, overall, I can't gush enough about this one episode, just because it's the thing with me is, I know from one point of view, I'm thinking, look, the action is fantastic. I like the way it was set up. It was a small action sequence with the Mars armor, but it did its job, and it did it really well. The music was there, like I said, that made it really fun. Overall, it was a nice spectacle to see. But the other side of me is thinking, you know what? This is literally how they get you to buy parts of the kits, or just the kits themselves, by showing off really, really nice combat sequences. And honestly, for a while, it had me on the edge of being like, you know what? I might buy the Mars armor and the upgrade kit for it with the melee weapons and stuff. And then I was like, nah, I think I'll hold off. But it was definitely one of those where you immediately, or at least when you first see it, you think, wow, this is amazing. This is so cool. It's got the music in the background. You think, yeah, this is perfect. And then you slowly realize that it is a very, very calculated marketing ploy to get you to buy stuff.
I mean, that's just the build franchise as a whole. Going all the way back to build beginning. Like, hello.
I mean, you're not wrong. I'm just saying it's pretty obvious if it wasn't already with Re-Rise, because of the way they set up like that.
My favorite points for this episode, I'd have to say in the beginning, where they're holding that strategy meeting, and how it flops back and forth between the before and after. Like, they start in the village, and then they got to a flashback to when they're having this meeting before, and then it goes back to the village. I love how when it goes to the flashback part, where Cosme, actually using his head for once, surprisingly, I know it's a shocker, and he's questioning Hirato's plan, whether or not, it's going to succeed, shouldn't we have a backup plan? That's not stupid. Legit, Cosme is actually showing that he has brains. And then Parvis is like, whatchamacallit, but we might get something special out of this. And Cosme is like, all right, let's do it. And I'm just like, God damn it, Cosme. And then it cuts back to the village, where he's just like, shut up, we're doing this plan, all y'all villagers better like it. And it's like, God damn it.
He's easily baited.
I mean, look, if you ever have a person like Cosme on your team, just, tell him there's going to be a special reward at the end of this. So just go along with it. um, Other than that, I do like a good chunk of the fight. I think the when they collapse the canyon, very, very good, but also couldn't like. I mean, I guess it would take them more time, but couldn't like the One Eyes just like crawl over the rubble.
Probably.
Just saying. But anywho, since they all go over to the other side, the whole fight happens. My biggest, and I do mean biggest, gripe with this entire fight is when the kids go and bother Parr.
Yep.
Now, now, I get it. Kids, that they're curious, they're dumb, they like things, and they just want to do whatever they want to do. But my problem comes from this entire time Parvis is just like, he's got stable footing, he's doing really well. And when the kids come over, oops, suddenly the cliff has to break and he falls down. What? That bugs me because it's like just a freaking MacGuffin thing happens.
See, I can't remember whether that was the cliff actually got shot beforehand and then he fell down as a result of it or not. No.
It may have been, but it's been a couple of days since I've seen the episode.
Yeah.
But other than that, we do get to see a glimpse. I didn't mention this, but in episode 2, when the party is flying to the village, Parvis is like freaking out because he has some fear of heights. And when the cliff collapses under Parvis, we see like that happen again. And like he's just hyperventilating because he, is like he's scared of heights, so falling wasn't good. And then on top of that, he has all these enemies that are like starting to surround him, and it like, I think it's good, but it's also kind of dumb because it's like we don't know if he's afraid of heights or if something happened.
See,
If we're just showing, oh, hey, look, he's falling, he's scared. I believe we also get a flashback to him overlooking like a forest, and it's like, okay, tells us nothing, but let's roll with it.
We get some shots of him freaking out, and then we get like almost a flashback of him looking at the sky, which we don't know whether it's in GBN or not, but it has like lightning in it. Now, the thing is, I don't know whether that links in with anything that we'll talk about later in episode 13 or not, but it would make sense because there's a strong theme going throughout all of Re-Rise, which is constant narratives that are played in the background that, like with Hiroto's flashbacks, like with May constantly going back to the admins and Maggie to figure out what's going on, and with Parr and his constant sort of freakouts when it comes to either flying or a fear of heights. It's something that kept getting brought up that might be more applicable in the larger narrative, and I just have a feeling that it's something like that because of things that, again, we'll talk about in episode 13.
Yeah. After that, I think it's pretty good still. The Mars armor. I mean, when you need to be edgy for all your powerful moves, am I right? And so yeah, I like how they introduced the Mars armor. I wish it got more of a spotlight. I mean, one unit, just, I don't know, it feels kind of weak to me.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I didn't like about it, is it only took out one unit compared to how much they've used the Earth armor. But I feel like it's also because of the fact of the Earth armor is a base kit that most people will buy when Re-Rise is coming out. So they want to show off the Earth armor a lot more and then kind of show off the additional add-ons, but not as much, you know. So it's kind of sucks when you think about it that way.
Yeah. And then we end on, I guess, would be called a high-ranking member in the Resistance, a group of these Eldorans, as they'll be known as. You know, they're fighting against the One Eyes, and the guy who pops out, his name is Jed, and he is the village chief's eldest son, and he is the eldest out of the three, which is going to be Jed, then Maya, and then Freddy. And he's joined by two of his vice captains, and they're wondering just what the hell happened here. That's pretty much where the episode ends off on. And then the credits happen. So, overall, not a bad episode. Just some things that I feel could have been done a bit better.
For me, the only thing, like I said, that was a bit of a problem was just how underutilized the Mars armor was. I feel like they definitely nailed the wow factor when it comes to taking out an enemy unit and showing how powerful it is, but apart from that, that really was kind of a letdown for the whole thing of we're just playing this all up for one single grunt. You know.
Alright, now on to episode 4, and a little bit of character building for Kazumi. I know, shocker. So, we open on a video where Kazumi is watching some internet celebrity named Captain Zeon. And I guess he considers himself GBN's protector. And he basically declares this while dropping a imaginary, I don't know how you would describe it, but he basically somehow summons Axis and drops it on top of 3 ruffians. And it's called rectifying, which that's not the correct term, but we'll roll with it. And Kazumi is just, he's getting super excited about this video. He's like, Captain Zeon's the best, you know, this is so great. And it really plays into us getting to know more about Kazumi. You know, he wants to be like Captain Zeon. Captain Zeon is his idol. And Kazumi isn't quite there. So that's a little bit of character building before the intro happens, and I really I like it. I like it.
It's one of those sequences. Oh, go
on. You were saying.
I was gonna say it's one of those sequences where when you first see it, you're like, "Wait a minute, what's going on here?" Because it's totally out of place. But it's played off again like a sort of like something that you would watch on YouTube or whatever, as like an animation. But
you know what?
Go on.
That's going to be the next competitor to YouTube.
GTube.
Somebody needs to go around and create a site called GTube.
So yeah, Captain Zeon references, or I think it's Kazami says Captain Zeon is a GTuber or something, or Kazami references himself as a GTuber. Kazami kind of idolizes Captain Xeon as if he was almost like Captain Falcon or something. I feel like that's the kind of thing they were trying to go for. He's almost like GBN's Superman of sorts, but with his own suit, which is a mix of the Sazabi and the new Gundam. But yeah, when it comes to his final attack, what was it, Axis Smash or something? Um, it it almost seems like he summons a not a physical representation of Axis, but it's almost like it's a giant beam saber that has maybe like a hologram representation of Axis on the end of it, and then that just gets slammed into these three unsuspecting guys, and it's kind of used as this whole sort of message of don't be bad in GBN, don't be, causing problems for people, don't be doing stuff that other players would find bad, because the way that they set it up is these other players have been causing trouble for people, whether it be parking the mobile suits in areas so that other people can't go anywhere, or just causing general mischief, and then Captain Xeon comes in and is all like, I'll save you. you know, it's a pretty weird thing to do. But yeah, a series just picked up in the background here for no reason.
How can I help?
You can't. Shut up. Okay.
God
So
damn it, Siri.
I know, right? But yeah, it's really weird in the way that it's played. The first time you see it, it is fun though. The Axis Smash is massive overkill, but the way that they do it, it's very enjoyable. I really like that. It's just ridiculous for the sake of it, but Kazami definitely looks up to him as though he's a superhero, and it's not so much that Kazami isn't all there. It's more like I get this weird feeling that Kazami looks up to him for other reasons based on, again, episode 13. I keep going back to it, and I'll keep going back to it over and over, but episode 13, for me, at least when
that Cosme isn't there yet.
He isn't there yet, but yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like stuff influences how he acts early on, and then how he will change. But it seems like the way that it's played off here is mindless fun and entertainment that Kazami watches between battles and things.
But after that, we do get a little bit of a strategy meeting with Jed, and it's sort of played off as like an homage to the 08th MS team. Even Parviz makes a reference to that, because he's the captain of the 8th team in the Resistance, and they're a group of like rebels and stuff, and the 08th MS team was all about rebels and guerrilla warfare. So pretty interesting. I liked that. Too bad none of the suits are designed after the goddamn Ground Gundam.
I know, right?
But yeah, no, I like that. And then they're told about some facility, right?
Yeah, it's if I remember rightly, it's a One Eyes facility that's building either new types or is causing problems for a nearby village that they then have to take care of.
And then whatchamacallit, they're told that the attack will commence in 3 days. And Cosme just blurts out, 3 days? Oh, well, I guess we should just go home. And like the Resistance people are like freaking out, and then Freddy's like, don't worry, I'll call them back, don't worry about it. It's like, Jesus, god damn it, Cosme. So, we get a brief shot after everyone is logging out. Parviz sees Harato just staring off into the distance. And then Harato's at the Gundam base, the restaurant cafe area, working on Core Gundam and having a bit of a chat with Hinata. And then we cut back to GBN and sort of a little strategy meeting about how they're going to go about the mission and how they should train for it. And Parviz brings up a normal mission in which there's a base that's defended by a singular unit, similar to the mission that they will be going on. And when they start this mission up, everything's going great, and the party has a plan on how they want to do this. And Kazumi, in his infinite wisdom, completely ignores the plan and charges straight in like a dumbass. And the base is guarded by a bound dock, which I seriously hate the design of that mobile suit. It's so ugly. It's powerful, but ugly. And immediately, like, not even a minute into this mission, Kazumi gets captured. And he's like, there are few things I can accept in this world. But somebody help me!
I love how he's kind of just like, I messed up, help! That bit.
And Parviz tries to help him and winds up just throwing fireballs into Kazumi because the bound dock drops him. And he's like, what are you doing? And, admittedly, it's not Parviz's fault. You just happen to be in the wrong place at the right time. And we see shortly after that, Mei and Harato take off and fly into the air after the bound dock, taking it down. And there's a scene where we get to see Parviz is, he's like, I've got to help them. I've got to fly. And then we see him try, and it's immediately cut to like this flashback. I believe he's looking over a forest with his hand held out. And he gets cold feet. Indicating that Parviz has some fear of heights for reasons that we don't understand right now. So he crashes to the ground, or more aptly, just kind of falls to the ground. Harato notices this and wonders if the he says it later in the episode, but he wonders if like the shield bits on the back open up into like wings. And Mei and Harato make short work of the bound dock. They just literally crush it under Mei's legs because Harato takes it out of the sky and it just falls on Kazumi. And Kazumi's reaction is the best, because literally the head of the bound dock is right next to the Justice Knight's head. And when Mei comes down and stomps on it, he's just like freaking out that, it was going to be him. Which he does make mention of that by the end of the battle. He's like, he's complaining about, that was close. You shouldn't do that. And I'm just thinking to myself, you got dropped. You could have fucking moved. It's not like you were immobile. After that, they get what should we call it? A high, a rapid fire beam cannon.
Yeah.
And he mentions that like the V2 offhandedly doesn't have the abilities. No, it wasn't the V2. I think it was the Earth Gundam. Earth 3 doesn't have a fast firing, heavy style cannon. Well, they just got one, and he already has a heavy style suit made up, or I guess more aptly, parts made up, and he just builds the cannon and adds it to the V2s, making it even more absurdly powerful than it already is. We also get another flashback. More flashbacks. And it's him reflecting on his time spent previously building the core Gundam and the mysterious girl being with him. And then we end on Parviz looking at his Gunpla, being extremely depressed that he can't do what he built it, like, intended for it to be able to do. And we cut to everyone waiting and in the sort of central hub of GBN, and they're like, man, where is Parviz? And then he shows up, and the episode ends. Overall, I like this episode better than episode 3. There's character building for not just Parviz, which happened a little bit in the previous episode, but also we get more about Kazumi, and we learn a good deal of why he is the way he is. And we also get to see that sort of every couple of days that there's either a One Eyes attack, or the players, the cast needs to prepare for attacking, which is sort of mission-like. I feel like it's structured that way. Like there is something guiding the players, and that's how they do it, is like, oh, every couple of days something happens. And then Parviz not being able to fly and being super depressed about it, we get more of a understanding of, he may be this new player and he may want to do all these things, but it's not like it's easy to do all these things.
Yeah.
And I could speak from experience. I used to not have a fear of heights. Really did. I apparently did a lot of dumb things. And I can attest, I did a lot of dumb things. That did involve height-related injuries. And, that sort of skewed my perception. Like, yeah, height is good and very bad in the wrong situations. But other than that, not much else happens in this episode. I really like how they went about training for the mission and how dumb Kazumi is. I mean, for people who hate Kazumi, I get it. The dude is just like straight up dumb, arrogant. But I feel like in episode 4, we get to see a little bit more of why that is, and a little more appreciation for Kazumi as a character. then the credits roll. And I think we'll go with you on this one, Moody. Episode 5.
I would say yeah for episode
Or-
5, but I might have to call it early and do the rest of it some other time, primarily just because of everybody else is kind of waiting on me here and going, dude, when are we doing this? When are we doing that? So, unfortunately, because I am a very busy man, it looks like we might have to continue it some other time. If that's alright with you.
I mean, oh, wait. Didn't say what we doing. I don't. Gundam Nuggers doesn't mind this. I was enjoying the discussion.
I'm still enjoying tongue twister. Enjoying discussion, but it's mainly John did post it up a while back saying, "Look, I thought you were doing GBO2. If you're doing GBO2, then you might want to get it done, you know, because it's getting late on our end anyway, and I have to be up early." So,
yeah, it is. Wow, Jesus.
I'm sorry about the time zones, people.
Time zones. Well, you know, I would have been able to do this sooner, but I had some other stuff to take care of that was just like, oh, hey, this is important. And I'm like, God damn it.
It's totally fine. Like if you've got any extra free time as well, then like I said, we can always pick it up some other time.
Yeah, free time. I mean, any time I'd say after like 4 during the week, I'm good. And then on the weekends, I'm usually free. So,
okay,
I mean,
sounds
if you
good.
want to set it up for maybe next Sunday, or like I said, anytime during the week,
Yeah.
after like 4 p.m., I'm good.
Okay. Right then. We'll call it there, and I'll jump on GBO2 before everybody starts ripping my head off. So, no.
Well, no one's forcing you. I don't think anyone's going to rip your head off here.
No, it's
But,
been fun.
I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you'll stick around for the next conversation.
Indeed. So, we'll see you guys next time, and we'll see you on the next stream. Bye.
Bye.